Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Devin, you can call me Dev, and today we're going to be talking about my June TBR. May was a really good month for me, as you would have seen in my May wrap up, but June I'm expecting to be a really big month. I think what I've set is an achievable amount of books, and I think I've got a good amount of diversity in the books that I'm planning to read this month. This month I've got a public holiday, which means I'll be reading all weekend, and it's winter. It's officially winter, so I'm going to be snuggled up indoors, drinking teas and reading my books. But let's get into my June TBR. The first book on my June TBR is actually one that I'm currently reading. I started it yesterday, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I probably pronounced that so wrong. So this book is actually one about time travel, which is actually really interesting because it's not a front-facing sci-fi book. So this book is actually a Japanese translated book, which is about a cafe in a back alley of Tokyo. It has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years, but this coffee shop offers its customers a unique experience, the chance to travel back in time. In Before the Coffee Gets Cold, we meet 4 visitors, each of whom is hoping to make use of the cafe's time-traveling offer in order to confront the lover who left them, receive a letter from their husband whose memory has begun to fade, see their sister one last time, and meet the daughter they never got the chance to know. But the journey into the past does not come without risk. Customers must sit in a particular seat, they cannot leave the cafe, and finally they must return to the present before the coffee gets cold. Toshikazu Kawaguchi's beautiful, moving story explores the age-old question, what would you change if you could travel back in time? If you're looking for something that is contemporary in essence but explores sci-fi themes, this might be the book for you. The next book on my June TBR is actually The Yield by Tara June Winch. Now this is an Australian fiction written by an Aboriginal author. This is actually really exciting, this book. It's actually got quite a big significance for me personally because it's actually going to be the first read at my work's book club, which I actually set up, and this will be our first month. And because it was Reconciliation Week last week, we decided that we wanted to read something in June that was by an Aboriginal author and tackled themes related to reconciliation. So, what is The Yield about? Knowing that he will die soon, Albert Poppy Gondawindi takes pen to paper. His life has been spent on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River at Prosperous House on Massacre Plains. Albert is determined to pass on the language of his people and everything that was ever remembered. He finds the words on the wind. August Gondawindi has been living on the other side of the world for 10 years when she learns of her grandfather's death. She returns home for his burial, racked with grief and burdened with all she tried to leave behind. Her homecoming is bittersweet as she confronts the love of her kin and news that Prosperous is to be repossessed by a mining company. Determined to make amends, she endeavours to save their land, a quest that leads her to the voice of her grandfather and into the past, the stories of her people, the secrets of the river. This is one of my high priority reads for June, as we're going to be catching up on the 1st of July to discuss our thoughts and experiences with reading this book. But if you're looking for an Aboriginal fiction, definitely pick this one up. The next book on my June TBR is actually The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and I'm really excited to read this. Let me tell you what The Paris Apartment is about. Welcome to number 12 Rue d'Ormuz, a beautiful old apartment block deep in the back streets of Montmartre, where nothing goes unseen and everyone has a story to unlock. The watchful concierge, the scorned lover, the prying journalist, the naive student, the unwanted guest. There was a murder here last night. A mystery lies behind the door of apartment 3. Who holds the key? I am predicting this to be a really fast-paced read for me. It is 400 pages roughly, but mystery, crime, thrillers are always super fast-paced and you just want to get to the end to know what happens. I've heard lots of good things about this book and I'm very excited to read it. The next book on my June TBR is actually Bunny by Mona Alved. Now, I've heard lots about this and I also haven't heard lots about this, if that makes sense. I've heard lots about the name of the book, and I've seen the cover so many times, but what the book is actually about, I'm honestly not sure. This was at my local library and I picked it up purely just from namesake. But let's read a little bit into what this is about. Samantha Heather Mackey is an outsider in her small, highly selected MFA program at Warren University. In fact, she is utterly repelled by the rest of her fiction writing cohort, a clique of unbearably twee rich girls who call each other Bunny. But then the bunnies issue her with an invitation and Samantha finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, across the threshold and down their rabbit hole. Blending sharp satire with fairy tale horror, Bunny is a spellbinding trip of a novel from one of fiction's most original new voices. I've heard this is like a really cerebral, like insane, kind of shocking read. I think it tackles topics related to cults, which I'm really intrigued by. I have no clue what's in store for this one, but I think this will be a really interesting read. So this book is about just over 350 pages. I have a feeling this is going to be a medium-paced read, but I'm interested to see whether I like it or not. I don't think I've read anything like this before, so let's see how we go in June. The next book on my June TBR is actually Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I have heard so much about this book. I have been wanting to read it for ages, but just haven't found the right time. And I feel like I'm ready. So many people that have read this book have said it is just so heart-wrenching and emotional, and that is my favorite. I want to cry. Make me cry, please. My eyes are ready. I'm prepped. I'm ready for the waterworks. But this book is a memoir from the acclaimed indie recording artist and New York writer Michelle Zauner, aka Japanese Breakfast, an unflinching, powerful memoir about growing up mixed race, Korean food, the loss to cancer of her Korean mother, and learning to forge her own identity. In this exquisite story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Zauner writes with humor and heart of struggling with her mother's high expectations, a painful adolescence, and treasured months spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up, her Koreanness began to feel ever more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal pancreatic cancer when Zauner was 25, forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gifts of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. Vivacious and plain-spoken, lyrical and honest, Michelle Zauner's voice is radiantly alive on the page as it is on stage. I'm really excited to read this. I think it's going to be so powerful. Traditionally, I'm not a massive memoir autobiography reader. I find that I'm not really super engaged and I lose a lot of interest in reading, which a lot of the time pushes me to put them on my DNF list. But I think because this is a really emotional read, I will become really invested in Michelle, and I've only heard good things about it. So if other people are having such emotional responses to this book, I can imagine I will too. And that's why I'm really excited to read this. And the last book on my June to be read is actually one that I'm going to read digitally. And that is Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. As you know, I read Malibu Rising in April, and I didn't actually know that this book existed. And as soon as I read the blurb for this, I was like, this is my cup of tea. This is everything I want. Romance, emotional, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Perfect. So what is this book about? Have you ever heard of supernovas? They shine brighter than anything else in the sky and then fade out really quickly. A short burst of extraordinary energy. I like to think you and Ben were like that. In that short time, you had more passion than some people have in a lifetime. Elsie Porter is an average 20-something, and yet what happens to her is anything but ordinary. On a rainy New Year's Day, she heads out to pick up a pizza for one. She isn't expecting to see anyone else in the shop, much less the adorable and charming Ben Ross. Their chemistry is instant and electric. Ben cannot even wait 24 hours before asking to see her again. Within weeks, the two are head over heels in love. By May, they've eloped. Only 9 days later, Ben is riding his bike when he is hit by a truck and killed on impact. Elsie hears the sirens outside her apartment, but by the time she gets downstairs, he has already been whisked off to the emergency room. At the hospital, she must face Susan, the mother-in-law she has never met, and who doesn't even know Elsie exists. Interweaving Elsie and Ben's charmed romance with Elsie and Susan's healing process, Forever Interrupted will remind you that there's more than one way to find a happy ending. Goosebumps! I am so excited to read this. I think it's going to be super emotional. I've had so many people just crying their eyes out reading this, and I wanted it to make me cry. It's going to be really good. I'm half tempted to read it as an audiobook, but I also know I think the idea of someone talking to me about the emotional things that happened will kind of make it less emotional. It might feel a bit intrusive, like I'm in my cry time, you're not meant to be in my cry time with me. But there we have it. That is all of my reads I've planned for June. So I've got 6 total. I feel like 6 is an absolutely achievable number for me. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, especially with wanting to film more YouTube content and that eating up into my reading time, which is okay. I have so much fun doing this, so it's totally worth it. That is my June to be read. If you're interested in seeing my progress throughout the month, feel free to follow me on Goodreads. I update almost daily, so you'll know exactly where I'm up to with all my reads for the month. You can also follow me on Instagram. I actually post mini reviews on my stories whenever I finish a book, so you'll be the first to know my thoughts as I finish. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you like what you saw. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!